In 399 BC, Athens sentenced Socrates to death. Rather than escape, he stayed, took a cup of hemlock, and drank. His defense rested on a specific civic logic. Because he had lived in Athens and accepted its protection for 70 years, he owed the state a permanent debt of obedience, even when the state demanded his life. Analyzing this choice through Gibsonian accumulation theory suggests a structural flaw in that logic. In the language of discrete token dynamics, this is a Socratic error. The model quantifies his decision as a misclassification of participation. From the node standpoint, his stay was driven by a high network lock state and a calculation to maximize his terminal witness value. Examining the specific math behind the Socratic error provides a framework for understanding how modern regimes maintain visible occupancy over populations that have already reached a failure threshold. A political state functions as a macroscopic accumulation object, a pile. Its primary optimization problem is retention, keeping constituent nodes load-bearing and the structure occupied. Inside the pile is the grain, or the individual node. The grain optimizes for its sovereignty, preserving its viability, identity, and future, regardless of the pile's stability. These represent two distinct mathematical problems. The pile manages support mass and density to prevent collapse. The node calculates the cost of remaining load-bearing versus the cost of exit. Visible macroscopic stability emerges only when these individual node equations balance. A regime remains occupied because its grains are currently locked into the structure by their own discrete threshold calculations. The standard narrative of civic duty treats past habitation as a permanent bond. In a Gibsonian model, however, historical benefit is an accumulated stock that fluctuates over time. The historical assent stock measures the discounted memory of a node being fed, protected, and included. Long residence increases this value, but regimes change state. When a state consumes its own substrate, a continuity defect triggers a discount multiplier, devaluing the historical stock. A continuity error occurs when a node fails to apply this discount. It imports the moral weight of a past version of the state into a present order that no longer provides the benefits that built the original stock. By failing to recognize this phase shift, the node binds itself to a historical abstraction, remaining in an oppressive structure based on benefits that have long since ceased to exist. We can map the specific interior pressures pushing on Socrates using the human failure functional. Destabilizing load rises as viability falls. For Socrates, net benefit was negative, while humiliation and moral injury scores climbed, creating intense internal pressure. Countering this was a stabilizing lock, the threat of the hemlock, and massive psychological barriers to leaving the network. When internal load exceeds the stabilizing lock, the node reaches a failure threshold. It becomes redistribution active, meaning the default state of passive stability is gone. At this point, the individual is forced out of simple compliance and into a structured choice regime where every possible action carries a high existential cost. Most political analysis assumes a binary choice. You either comply or you leave. The framework identifies an expanded action set. An active node evaluates 6 channels, from assenting stay to martyrdom. Each action calculates welfare and costs, but also includes a terminal bequest value, the expected downstream impact of a final act on the pile. For a node with a short remaining life horizon and high symbolic influence, martyrdom can be a rational optimization. A terminal act can be calculated to inflict significant damage on the regime's future cohesion. In this calculus, choosing to stay and die attempts to destabilize the pile from within, entirely independent of any continued belief in the pile's legitimacy. To understand why a node remains, the model distinguishes between effective assent and effective submission. When fear, habit, and the psychological friction of exit outweigh any genuine belief in the regime, the node is in a state of assent-submission inversion. This is the core of the Socratic error. A node continues to participate because it is trapped by retaliation and network lock, but it narrates that participation as a noble civic duty to maintain its identity. Oppressive structures rely on this misclassification. By keeping exit friction high and retaliation certain, they force nodes into a stay state, relying on them to describe it as willing loyalty. The grain standpoint formalism identifies 3 distinct ways to inhabit a regime: true assent, misclassified submission, or instrumental martyrdom. True assent was mathematically unavailable to Socrates. The continuity defect between his historical Athens and the current prosecuting state was too large. His stay was either a case of misclassified submission, identity fusion masking a coercive trap, or instrumental martyrdom, a move to maximize symbolic impact against the state. Modern political orders are connected networks of nodes, constantly running these internal calculations. They remain occupied as long as the cost of exit or resistance exceeds the current internal load. A regime's visible occupancy is the aggregated result of nodes navigating survival, coercion, and witness. Remaining in place is a calculation of viability, not a proof of legitimacy.